I fainted when I opened my promotion letter at the office party. My boss laughed in my face and said, "You didn't deserve it anyway." 4 hours later, my coworkers started screaming as a fire truck crashed into the building. "You didn't deserve it anyway." That's what my boss, Wallace, said right after I fainted at our office party. Everyone saw it. The embarrassment. The humiliation. And just hours later, our entire office was upended, literally, when a fire truck plowed through the lobby of our building in downtown Pittsburgh. It was the most surreal 24 hours of my life. But what came after was even stranger. I never expected what would happen next, or how it would change everything I thought I knew about my career, my self-worth, and what it means to be truly respected. My name's Corinne Webb. I'm 43, divorced, mother of one sarcastic teenage boy who mostly tolerates me, and I've worked in logistics for over a decade. I'm not flashy. I'm not corporate chic or someone who draws attention when I walk into a room. I just do my job. Really well, actually. I know the ins and outs of our operations like the back of my hand, and up until recently, I thought that meant something. Maybridge International had been my home since my early 30s. It's not a glamorous place, just another logistics company with clunky software and endless customer accounts to manage. But I was proud of the work I did. I helped keep things running smoothly, took on extra projects, mentored new hires, stayed late without being asked. I wasn't expecting fireworks or confetti when our department director retired. But I was expecting fairness. Merrill, my former boss, had been with the company for years and had always treated me with quiet respect. Before he left, he pulled me aside and said, "You're the obvious choice to fill my shoes, Corinne." That stuck with me. He wasn't a man prone to compliments. Then came Wallace Trent. Wallace showed up from corporate with his sleek suits, talking points, and PowerPoints. He was the kind of man who called staff resources and smiled too wide while he handed out policies none of us asked for. Still, I hoped, he'd see what I brought to the table. I'd been working harder than ever in the weeks leading up to the promotion decision. Prepping budgets, organizing workflows, double-checking our quarterly performance reports. I even skipped Elliot's robotics competition to finish a proposal Wallace had said would help make his decision easier. The annual office party was held that Friday at the Marriott near the river. Typical event, cheap wine, awkward small talk, lukewarm hors d'oeuvres. But the vibe was tense. Everyone knew the promotion announcement was coming. Wallace gave a speech full of the usual empty fluff, then smiled as he handed out sealed envelopes to 3 of us, myself, Claudia, and Miles. Claudia had been with the company for maybe 9 months. Nice enough, sure, but she once confused a bill of lading with a customer invoice. Miles was solid but young and clearly not in the running. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened my letter. It was only 1 line long, position filled, Claudia Morel. At first, I didn't understand it. I read it again, and my body just gave out. I collapsed right there in my heels, in the middle of the ballroom, just past the bar. I heard the gasps. The shuffle of footsteps. Someone yelling my name. I came to with Sharon from HR waving a paper plate in front of my face like it would somehow bring oxygen back into my lungs. Then Wallace's face appeared above mine. "Oh," he said, in that syrupy fake tone, "Corinne. Guess the excitement was too much, huh?" I blinked. My head throbbed. What happened?" He gave this short laugh. The kind people do when they're trying to be clever at your expense. "Look," he said, loud enough that a few others turned to hear, "Claudia earned this. You've been, well, steady. But let's be honest, you didn't really deserve it anyway." I remember looking around. Everyone heard him. No one said anything. Claudia was sipping a drink, eyes wide but unmoving. Miles looked down at his shoes. I left without saying another word. I drove home in silence. I barely remember parking. I just know that when I got inside, I sat on the kitchen floor and stared at the oven clock blinking 11:42 for what felt like hours. My beagle, Tofu, curled up next to me, tail thumping in sympathy. I didn't sleep. At 2:11 a.m., I got a text from Yara. She works dispatch for the night shift. Corinne, did you see the news? Firetruck just slammed through the building lobby. I blinked. Sat up. I turned on the TV. There it was. Flames, smoke, shattered glass. The local news was broadcasting it live. A runaway fire truck, responding to a 3-alarm fire across town, had careened off the road and crashed into the base of our building. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt, most of the office was empty. But the damage was serious enough that they evacuated and cordoned off the entire area. We were officially shut down until further notice. It was surreal. Just hours before, I was being publicly humiliated. Now, our entire office was shut down by an act of God. Or fate. Or whatever cosmic force gets involved when things are so absurd that reality bends around them. The following Monday, I got an email from Wallace. Just a short message: Corinne, need help setting up temporary remote ops. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Then a second email. Then a call. By Thursday, he was begging. Apparently, Claudia had no idea how to coordinate with IT, and no one trusted her with sensitive client data. Teams were scattered, servers were inaccessible, and upper management was breathing down Wallace's neck. I waited until Friday. Then I walked into the temporary operations center they'd set up in a shared office space near the Strip District. It was chaos. People on laptops looking lost, calls going unanswered, documents in disarray. Wallace looked like he hadn't slept in days. Claudia was nowhere to be found. Corinne, he said, standing up like I was his salvation. Thank God. I just raised an eyebrow. Thought I didn't deserve it. He had the decency to look embarrassed. Please. We need you. I didn't respond. Just pulled out my notebook and started giving instructions. That's when everything shifted. I didn't go back to help them because I wanted redemption. I went back because I knew those teams. The people scattered across those makeshift offices were the same ones who leaned on me when servers failed at 6 p.m. on a Friday. They were the ones who texted me pictures of their kids and brought in leftover pie after Thanksgiving. I couldn't let their work fall apart just because Wallace had a fragile ego and promoted a girl who once asked if we still needed to file things in alphabetical order. I walked into that room and didn't wait for anyone to roll out a welcome mat. Within an hour, I had the team leaders organized. I dug up access credentials, restored contact with our top 3 clients, and mapped out a crisis schedule that wouldn't bleed the company dry. Everyone looked stunned, except the people who'd worked with me long enough to know what I was capable of. Wallace mostly kept quiet. He hovered near the coffee machine, watching everything with an expression I couldn't quite place. Not humility. Not guilt. More like a man watching the ground shift under his feet and realizing too late that he hadn't built anything solid to stand on. By the following Tuesday, the company had stabilized. Not fully, but enough that our biggest client, Norbit Freight Line, sent an email to the executive team praising the swift and structured recovery led by Ms. Webb. That was the subject line, swift and structured recovery led by Ms. Webb. It felt like justice. Not loud or flashy, but firm. Earned. Claudia, for her part, barely showed up that week. She was clearly overwhelmed. One of the IT guys mentioned she cried in the restroom after the team leads had a rough meeting. I didn't gloat. I didn't want to. She wasn't the villain. She was just a pawn who had no idea she was being used until it was too late. Still, Wallace tried to save face. At the end of the week, he called a team debrief meeting. Everyone expected him to acknowledge the situation. Maybe apologize. Maybe not. Instead, he opened with, "I think this has shown us how important adaptability is in times of uncertainty." That was it. No acknowledgement of my work. No mention of Claudia's disappearance. Nothing but management babble stitched together with words like agility, resilience, and proactive alignment. People exchanged glances. A few rolled their eyes. And then, something subtle happened. They stopped turning to Wallace. They started coming to me. Every logistical question. Every operational hiccup. Even things Wallace should have been answering, they redirected to me. I became the unofficial director, without the title or the office. It should have felt good. It did, in some ways. But it also made me angry. Because it confirmed what I already knew: I had been doing this job for years. They had all seen it. Wallace had seen it too, he just didn't want someone like me representing his vision. There's something they don't tell you about being competent. People rely on you. They appreciate you. But they rarely reward you for it. Especially when you're a woman past 40 who isn't flashy, who doesn't charm rooms or network at weekend golf events. It wasn't about deserving. It was about visibility. A week later, Marianne Kruger, our CEO, flew in from Chicago to assess the damage. She was the real power behind the scenes. I'd only met her twice, both brief handshakes in elevators or conferences. Sharp woman. The kind who didn't waste words. Marianne held individual meetings with the senior staff. Mine was scheduled for 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. I walked in with a notepad, expecting a 15-minute debrief. She closed the door behind me, gestured toward the chair across from hers, and said, "I've heard your name a lot this week." I gave a polite nod. "I've been helping the team stay operational." She leaned back in her chair. "More than helping, from what I've gathered." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She laced her fingers together and looked at me carefully. "Tell me what happened. With the promotion. I want to hear it from you." That surprised me. Not just the question, but the way she asked it, direct, unflinching. I told her everything. Calmly. Factually. No dramatics. Just the truth, plain and simple. When I got to Wallace's comment, "You didn't deserve it anyway," I saw something shift in her eyes. Not surprise. Not outrage. Just calculation. She wrote something down. Then asked, "What do you want, Corinne?" It caught me off guard. I'd spent so long asking for scraps, acknowledgement, fair treatment, basic human decency. But now, for the first time, someone was asking me what I wanted. Not what I'd settle for. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I want a role that matches what I'm already doing," I said. "I want the authority to fix what I know is broken. I want to build something that can withstand the next disaster. And I want people to stop treating me like I'm invisible because I don't make noise." She smiled, just slightly. Good answer. We talked for 30 more minutes, about structure, about future plans, about what the company really needed. When I left the room, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not just confidence. Control. Not over everything, life is never that clean, but over myself. My time. My energy. My direction. The following Monday, Wallace was asked to step aside from day-to-day operations for the duration of the restructuring. No one cried about it. Claudia put in a quiet transfer request to another region. She left without fanfare. I sent her a short email, no bitterness, no pettiness. Just wishing her the best. She replied with a single line, "I'm sorry for how it happened." I believed her. By the time the dust settled, figuratively and literally, I found myself in an entirely new position, even if no one had updated my job title yet. Meetings were being routed through me. Department leads would stop by my desk, a temporary fold-up table with mismatched chairs, but still to ask if their timelines were viable. Even the interns, who once looked at Claudia with wide eyes and deference, now waited until I weighed in before proceeding with anything serious. Still, no official announcement came. And honestly, that gnawed at me more than I wanted to admit. For all the progress, I was still unofficial. Still unacknowledged, technically. Wallace hadn't been fired, just restructured into another role somewhere at corporate, probably to quietly fade away or wait it out until people forgot. Claudia's desk sat empty for a few days before someone removed her nameplate. One afternoon, I overheard two mid-level managers chatting near the coffee machine. "She's basically running the whole department now," one said. "Yeah, but you know how it goes," the other replied. "If she were going to get the job, they'd have done it by now." It hit me harder than I expected. Was I being used? Again? Was I being kept in limbo because I was convenient, dependable, but not promotable in the way they wanted their leaders to look? I found myself questioning everything. The quiet head nods from upper managers. The way Marianne had thanked me in passing in the hallway but hadn't followed up since. The "we'll be in touch" responses that were beginning to feel like polite dodges. And then, something happened that I didn't expect. I got an email from someone I hadn't spoken to in over 2 years. Bryn Schultz. Bryn had been a senior director before she'd left the company for a role at a multinational firm in Chicago. Smart, warm, direct. She'd once given me a ride home during a blizzard and offered unsolicited but appreciated advice on how to advocate for myself. Her message was short: "Heard what happened. Heard how you handled it. We should talk. Coffee?" We met that weekend at a cafe near Schenley Park. It was late morning, brisk outside, with the kind of gentle wind that made the coffee cup steam like something out of a photo shoot. Bryn sat down with a small smile and got straight to it. "You know they're never going to give it to you unless you push." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She sipped her drink. "You're the one keeping things afloat. They know that. You've proven it. But they also know you won't burn the place down to demand recognition, and unfortunately, in corporate life, that's currency." I sighed. I thought doing the work was supposed to matter. She gave me a sympathetic look. "It does. But only if the right people are watching, and only if you remind them they need you more than you need them." She wasn't wrong. I'd always been the person who cleaned up after the storm, not the one who caused it. But now I realized that sometimes, if you don't stir things up, they'll build a ceiling over your head and pretend it's the sky. That conversation stuck with me. The following Monday, I requested a meeting with Marianne. No sugarcoating. No passive waiting. Just a direct calendar invite titled "Proposal, Permanent Department Structure Post-Recovery." She accepted it within 5 minutes. I prepared everything meticulously. Not just a case for myself, but a full strategic plan, organizational charts, department workflows, KPI projections, risk mitigation approaches, every piece of proof that I wasn't just reacting to chaos. I was shaping the company's future resilience. When I walked into her office, she greeted me with a nod and said, "You're ready." I didn't ask how she knew. She just did. For the next 45 minutes, I presented everything. Calmly. Clearly. Professionally. I didn't once mention Wallace or Claudia. I didn't play the pity card. I didn't need to. At the end, I looked her in the eye and said, "I've already been doing this job. All I'm asking is to do it with the title and authority it requires." Marianne didn't smile, but she did lean back and look at me for a long, quiet moment. "You're right," she said. "You've done more than enough." Still, no handshake. No instant offer. Just a simple, "Give me a week." And so, I waited. Again. But this time I wasn't holding my breath. I wasn't fragile, or uncertain, or hoping for someone to save me. I was prepared for anything. Meanwhile, word around the office shifted. People whispered about new roles being created. About changes to the executive team. About someone upstairs finally paying attention. My inbox started to fill with congratulatory messages, from people who assumed I'd already gotten the job. Some were genuine. Some were carefully worded just in case olive branches. It was a strange feeling, being celebrated for something that hadn't officially happened yet. One afternoon, I caught Elliot watching me from across the kitchen table while I reviewed workflow charts and sipped a lukewarm cup of tea. "You're acting different," he said. I looked up. "Different how?" "Like you're not as tired," he shrugged. "Like you're doing stuff that matters." That one landed hard. It wasn't just about work. It was how I was carrying myself now, shoulders back, voice steady, less of that low-level bitterness humming underneath everything. I hadn't even realized it until he pointed it out. I ruffled his hair and smiled. "It does matter. And so do I." He grinned and turned back to his laptop. "Told you you should have made them listen to you sooner. Teenagers. Cruel, honest, and, somehow, always watching." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with Tofu curled up beside me and thought about everything that had happened. About how close I came to giving up. About how one humiliating moment had somehow opened the door to everything I'd been quietly working toward for years. I didn't have the title yet. But I had the proof. And for once, that felt like enough to stand on. A few more days passed. Quietly. Uneventfully, on the surface. But beneath the stillness, I felt it, something shifting. It was like standing in the seconds before a storm breaks, that tense, electric stillness you can't quite explain until it's already passed. I kept working, of course. I didn't know how to stop. Crisis cleanup had bled into system redesigns, which had morphed into full team reorgs. I found myself staying late again, not out of obligation, but momentum. We were doing something that mattered now. I was steering the ship, even if no one had officially handed me the wheel. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, while reviewing the quarterly vendor performance data with a few leads, I got an internal ping. From Marianne's executive assistant, "Please stop by the 16th floor conference room at 3 p.m. Confidential. Just you." My stomach tightened, not with dread, not exactly. But something close to it. The kind of feeling you get right before a verdict. You know you've told the truth. You've done the work. But you still brace yourself for disappointment. I glanced at the clock. It was 2:08. The rest of the hour passed in a blur. I tried to stay focused, keep my face neutral as I wrapped up meetings and answered emails. But the second hand ticking on the wall suddenly sounded louder than it had in months. At 2:59, I stood up. Smoothed my sweater. Wiped invisible dust off my slacks. Then I walked the 2 floors up, past familiar doors and impersonal art pieces, until I reached the glass-paneled conference room. The door was slightly ajar. Marianne was already inside, seated alone, a leather folder in front of her. She gestured for me to sit. I did. No one else came in. No pleasantries this time. Just her voice, steady and measured. "I want you to know something," she said. "Before any paperwork. Before any announcements." I held her gaze. "You earned this months ago. You just didn't wait for permission." A pause. Then she slid the folder toward me. I didn't rush to open it. I knew what was inside, or hoped I did. But I needed to hear her say it. "You're being offered the position of Director of Logistics and Operations Strategy, effective immediately," she said. "Full authority over your department. Expanded budget. Direct reporting line to me." I slowly opened the folder. Read the title on the letterhead. My name. The position. The terms. And something in me shifted, not in a triumphant way. More like a quiet affirmation. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't fought for something intangible. This was real. Marianne studied me as I closed the folder. "I suspect you're not the type to gloat," she said. I shook my head. Never felt like it helped anyone. "Good," she replied. "Because there's work to do. We're not done cleaning up the mess that was left behind." "I know," I said. "But we're moving forward now." Her lips twitched into the barest hint of a smile. "Make sure we don't forget how we got here." That weekend, I finally let myself breathe. I didn't work. I didn't review reports. I didn't check emails or Slack messages or spreadsheets. Instead, I cleaned the house. I walked tofu along the river trail. I watched Elliot fiddle with wires and code for his robotics project and resisted the urge to correct his math. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt present. Not stretched between other people's crises. Not invisible behind someone else's title. Just me. Whole. Capable. Seen. Later that night, Elliot wandered into the kitchen while I was making tea. "Hey," he said, grabbing a soda. "You look like you're winning at adulting or something." I laughed. "Took me long enough." He shrugged. "You always were. They just didn't notice." That quiet confidence in his voice, it stayed with me. More than Marianne's words. More than the title in that folder. It was a reminder that the people who matter most often see you before the world catches up. I didn't go back to work that Monday for recognition. I went back to lead. Not to prove anything anymore. Not to play catch-up or beg for a seat at the table. But to take the damn chair, put it where I wanted, and build something better from it. And I wasn't doing it alone. Because somewhere in that long mess of failure, firetrucks, and false starts, something solid had finally taken root. The first thing I did on my first official day as director wasn't dramatic. No sweeping speeches. No mass emails. No big statement outfit or click-clack heels. I just showed up. I got in early, like I always did, and brewed coffee in the break room, the way Meryl used to. Strong, black, no nonsense. A quiet signal. This space was functional again. Held together by intention, not panic. When the rest of the team filtered in, they nodded at me with a new kind of respect. Not performative. Not fearful. Just grounded. Like they'd seen me walk through the fire and come out standing straighter. Over the next 2 weeks, I restructured the entire department. I eliminated 2 redundant mid-manager positions, the kind Wallace created to give titles to his favorites. I promoted Yara, our night dispatcher and easily the smartest logistical brain I'd worked with in years, to senior analyst. She cried in the supply room when I handed her the offer letter. I cried with her. Quietly. Privately. Then we got back to work. I pulled in 2 contractors I used to mentor, gave them real roles, not internships, and paid them what they were worth. Everything tightened. Every process streamlined. Every meeting had a purpose. For once, people weren't just surviving their jobs, they were thriving. And word got around. Corporate started using our recovery plan as a model for other departments. A quiet memo circulated from the executive floor calling our group the benchmark division. I didn't care about the praise. But I did enjoy what happened next. Wallace came back. Not to lead, his days of walking around like the king of synergy were over. But he still worked in the company, reassigned to a corporate strategy liaison position. The kind of floating role that meant, we don't know where to put you, but we're not going to fire you outright. One day, we ended up on the same Zoom call. He logged in a few minutes late. His camera came on. He looked thinner, older. Not in a tragic way. Just deflated. No more smug confidence. Just a middle-aged man with a fancy degree and nowhere to point it. He didn't acknowledge me. Tried to pretend it was a normal call. But he had to sit there as I led the agenda. As I presented to the regional board. As his former colleagues deferred to me. Not him. It wasn't cruel. I didn't need it to be. It was just justice. That's the thing no one tells you about revenge, the best kind doesn't come with gloating or rage. It comes in silence. In success. In the undeniable weight of your competence being seen. About a month later, I was invited to a company-wide leadership summit in Chicago. All department heads. Marianne opened the event. At the end of her keynote, she said, "Some of you know what it means to lead through disaster. But few have done it as gracefully and effectively as Corinne Webb. We'd all do well to learn from her." I didn't cry. I just stood, nodded once, and sat back down. After the summit, Wallace found me in the hotel lobby, where I was sipping a tea and skimming my schedule. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Corinne." I looked up. "I just wanted to say," he rubbed the back of his neck. "You were right. I underestimated you." I raised an eyebrow. "That's putting it gently." He gave a small, strained chuckle. "Fair." There was a beat of silence. "You handled it better than I would've," he said. I closed my notebook. Looked at him fully for the first time in a long while. "I didn't handle you. I handled the mess you left." He nodded. "Still. You made something out of it." "I always was," I said simply. "You just didn't notice." He looked down, then back at me. "Good luck, Corinne." "I don't need luck," I replied. "I've got results." He didn't argue. He just walked away. Months passed. Elliot graduated high school with a quiet sort of pride. I sat in the stands, clapping louder than anyone. We went out for milkshakes afterward, and he said, "You're really different now, you know that?" I asked him what he meant. "You smile more," he said. "And you don't talk about work like it's something happening to you. You talk like you own it." He was right. I had claimed my space. Not because someone finally gave it to me, but because I stopped waiting. I took it. Piece by piece. Every late night. Every quiet win. Every invisible load I carried finally amounted to something people could no longer ignore. The promotion. The title. The influence. That was never the real reward. The real reward was this: getting to walk into a room and know exactly who I am. No apologies. No permission. Just me, respected, prepared, and utterly in control of my own damn story.